Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we love talking about Feed America First. That's why we're honored to have with us Julie Vandel. She is the Director of Development with Feed America First. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm always grateful for an opportunity to talk about work, which is funny because it's great to love my job as much as I do and what we do. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, when you talk about impact, making a difference, literally feeding families and individuals, providing nourishment, hope, inspiration, like there's a lot to what you do. And so let's go ahead and dive in, because when you talk about providing food to those who feed the hungry, obviously that's the mission side, but let's start with a little bit of history. So give us some history for Feed America First.
Absolutely. So we were founded in June 2000 by Tom Henry and Don Herbert. And Tom actually had an engineering degree and spent his whole career in the restaurant business. And he got to around his 50s and realized he had a lot of success in his life, but felt like he hadn't had a lot of significance. So he, knowing all that he knew within the restaurant industry and how food manufacturing works, he partnered with Don Herbert to start Feed America First with the mission to provide food to those who feed the hungry, because they saw so many great programs within, inner city and, like Second Harvest doing great work and all these different mobile food pantries and backpack programs. But what they saw was that a lot of the small towns and rural areas across Tennessee weren't getting the same resources and didn't have the same amount of help that some of these other great programs were, providing to, the bigger cities. So our focus is small towns and rural areas. He just started that with a dream, started it with a truck and a pole barn, and look at us today.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into the magic in terms of how it works. And so let's start with where you source the food. And so talk about how you receive the food, and also to the multiplier effect in terms of dollars donated and how you're able to leverage all of these relationships. So let's start with the food, and then we'll work our way to the nonprofit organizations you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions in hunger relief is that we're just getting food that's about to go bad from grocery stores. But what people don't realize is the amount of food waste in America. Even statistics say over 40% of the food produced in America ends up in a landfill. So food being produced all day, every day, so much of it is wasted, mainly just due to overproduction or mislabeling, mishandling. There's just so much food that it doesn't matter if it goes to waste per, manufacturers and companies' standards. Because, for example, maybe a yogurt manufacturer makes 1 million pounds of yogurt a week, and they send 850,000 pounds to all the different grocery stores across Middle Tennessee. Well, what do they do with that extra 150,000? Well, they're still manufacturing. They've got to get that extra out. So they have options. They either send it to the landfill, or they can partner with places like Feed America First. So we receive large-scale donations, typically directly from manufacturers, distributors, wholesales, farms, all over the place, really. Sometimes we'll get funny calls of, a truck driver broke down and he had a whole truckload of green beans, whatever it may be, and now he missed his destination point, and now the food, they just told him to get rid of it. So we'll get all sorts of different stories, but a lot of it is typically just over manufacturing. So we partner with a lot of local manufacturers, and they just donate their overruns to us. But again, sometimes we'll get random calls. Maybe it's a farm in Idaho that had a great crop year and have 200,000 pounds of potatoes to send our way, or there's a lot of strict rules within, the food manufacturing and distribution system. So one time we got in over 40,000 pounds of onions because the trailer was kept like 1 or 2 degrees cooler than it was supposed to be. So of course they're still perfectly fresh, but by those industry standards, they're not going to accept it because the temperature wasn't kept at, temperature it was supposed to be. So all sorts of little rules that get us the food that we get.
What does that mean in terms of facilities needed for your end? Because when you talk about, there is some planning that can go in and consistency, and then there's others like you're talking about where it just kind of falls in your lap, but you've got to be able to have the storage facility to be able to take that in. So what does that mean for facilities on your end?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, when we were started out of a pole barn 24 years ago, we've been grateful to, rent different warehouses throughout the years. And then our previous landlord, I guess we could kind of say current, out of the goodness of his heart, Robert Stroop, donated our current building to us. We were leasing it from him. He let us design it to our standards and build it from the ground up. And when we got it up and running, he donated it to us, which was a huge blessing. And the 5 acres it sits on, so amazing blessing. So we have a 20,000 square foot warehouse and a fleet of 4 box trucks and 2 tractor trailers that help us get things where they need to be. And then we also recently completed the construction of our cooler and freezer, which is a game changer in our world. That allows us to save a lot more fresh, perishable foods that need refrigeration, your veggies, your fruits, your meat, your cheese, your dairy. So that was actually just live in the past year. And so we are able now to save so much more healthy food, which is another huge blessing for us.
Talk about now, let's switch over the nonprofit side, the organizations, the communities. You mentioned
absolutely.
rural is the focus. And so as we mentioned at the onset, provide food to those who feed the hungry. So you work through partners to be able to make all this happen. Talk about your partners.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, providing food to those who feed the hungry. So we provide, the easiest way I think to describe it is we provide food to food pantries. So when you see our giant 20,000 square foot warehouse, we're more of a wholesaler. So we'll get in all the donations we'll receive, that week or month, maybe those onions I mentioned or the green beans. And even out there right now, we've got ham and blackberries and green beans and coffee, all sorts of stuff. So we never know. It's always a surprise what we're going to get. But then we turn around and divide and distribute that out to the smaller food pantries in rural areas. So once a month in Murfreesboro, all of our Middle Tennessee partner agencies will come to pick up their monthly load of food from us. But then every other week, we are distributing food in different areas around Tennessee. So we'll load up our trucks and go to Cookeville. And then all of our, more East Tennessee partner agencies will come meet us and get their monthly load of food. So we go to Clarksville to get, Northern Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, Savannah, which is West Tennessee. We go to Huntsville, Alabama, Murfreesboro, Tullahoma, Cookeville. So yeah, we're all over the state. So we'll load up our trucks and take that food, and then the smaller food pantries will meet us and get their food from us, and then go back into their own communities and then give it away from there.
Think about some of the stats that warm your heart when you look at the number of food pantries and organizations, the number of volunteers, the number of donations. Like, talk about some of the stats that really warm your heart.
I think to me, the biggest thing is that, yes, it's a large operation. Every month we're saving and redistributing around 1 million pounds of food. And we have hundreds of volunteers, but I think what matters the most is that it all boils down to that one family. We actually reach over 40,000 families a month, but it all boils down to that one mom who did not know how she was going to feed her kids that week. And with the food that we distribute, it's such a relief that I don't have to worry about how I'm going to come up with food money for groceries. We actually heard that story just a few weeks ago when we were doing a mobile food pantry. A woman, she was a teacher and a single mom, and she also worked multiple jobs, part-time, after school, and on the weekends just to get by. But my goodness, we all know what grocery prices are like these days. So even if you did have a little bit of money left over, it doesn't go far at the grocery store anymore. Or I heard a story of an elderly woman who wanted a red bell pepper. She wrote it on her grocery list every week, and every week after buying her other essentials, she couldn't afford it. A single red bell pepper. And it's hard to wrap your mind around that that level of poverty exists in America, but it's everywhere. So every week she wrote this red bell pepper, but couldn't afford it week to week. And then she finally found a food pantry in her area. And at the top of her food box was a red bell pepper for free for her. And she just started crying. Everyone was like, what's wrong? And that's all she wanted in life. So yes, we, distribute millions of pounds of food and reach hundreds of thousands of families a year, but it all comes down to each individual family and what their story is and what they're struggling with and how much the food helps them.
Talk about how the community can support your efforts. You touched on volunteerism, and so go ahead and dive in deeper on that side, but talk about how the community can help.
Yeah, I love this question because I feel like no matter who you are, where you are, you can do something. So maybe you don't have a lot of money, maybe you're in need yourself, but you can always volunteer either at Feed America First or maybe one of our partnering food pantries. There's always something you can do within your community to volunteer. But maybe you have no time to volunteer, but can donate. So even $20 can go a long way. For every dollar donated to Feed America First, we are able to provide enough food for 10 to 15 meals. So your dollar here stretches a miraculous amount. So even $20 is over 200 meals to a family in need. So maybe all you can afford is $10, $20. That's amazing because you will make a difference with that little bit amount of money. No donation is too small. But maybe you are, wealthier, and maybe you can make a pledge to our capital campaign where we're paying off our, cooler freezer. Or maybe you're a company who would like to sponsor or even come out and take a tour or have a volunteer event. We can open the doors for school field trips. You can host a food drive, you name it. There's just so many things that you can do no matter what level of, time or wealth that you have. Every little thing matters.
Touch on how you're able to get that multiplier effect in terms of, $1 when you talk about the power of it, but talk about how you're able to realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really just based on how much food we distribute in a year. And the USDA states that 1.25, I believe, pounds of food equals a meal. So when we distribute over, 12 to 24, up to 24 million pounds of food every year, and we do so on a pretty tight budget. We only have 9-10 staff at a time. We don't, spend, you're never going to see a Feed America First billboard or anything. We don't spend a lot of money on, marketing or things like that. A little bit, you do what you have to do, but we're not wasting anything. We're a faith-based organization, and we believe we're supposed to be good stewards of every dollar that we receive, all the food we receive, our staff and employees. So with all the volunteer help and all, the food donations and monetary donations, we're able to distribute millions of pounds of food a year on a very slim budget with all the help. So that's how we can, distribute as much food as possible on a little budget. So that's why every dollar provides as much food as it does.
Give me one more thing that you wish everyone knew about Feed America First.
Ooh, boy, I could talk for hours on that question. I think one of the biggest things is that we're providing to those small towns and rural areas that are often forgot about. It's so easy to, go about our day-to-day lives, and, you go to work and maybe you go shopping on the weekends and go out to eat. And, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions within hunger, because you might think, when you think about hunger, you might think that, the homeless man on the corner with the sign or something like that. But hunger really is, it could be any of us. Times are tough. That it's expensive to live right now. Groceries are expensive. And, sometimes when I go to these food pantries that we partner with, I walk in and I have no clue who is maybe the pastor of the church. I don't know who's running the food pantry. Just by sight, you can't tell who's there in line to get food or who's there volunteering, because hunger really is just your average everyday person who, for whatever reason, can't afford groceries. Maybe it's single moms struggling to get by. Maybe it's elderly on Social Security. We see that all the time. So I feel like hunger has such a negative connotation sometimes to it, where people think these people don't need it. They're just, panhandling, all that. And that's my biggest pet peeve. So really, hunger is your everyday person at the grocery store. It's sneaky. It could be anybody. And especially in these small towns and rural areas that don't have as many resources as bigger cities do. Even thinking about like Petersburg, Tennessee, where I grew up, it's less than 600 people in the entire town, and there's 2 gas stations, and that's about it. So even where do they go for jobs? Some people have to travel and spend a lot of gas money just to get to their job. So there's a lot of help needs to go to these areas, and that's just what we're trying to do.
Yeah, very well said. Wrap up with contact information. So website, where do we go to learn more and get involved with Feed America First?
Yeah, we're at feedamericafirst.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok even. The best way is to start with our website at feedamericafirst.com, and then you can find our socials from there. We try our best to keep everything updated with the different events we have. We have quite a few fundraising events coming up, but then also like our Instagram and social media, just to see some of our day-to-day and the food we receive and some of the families that we, are able to give to. So we're also on LinkedIn for, corporations, businesses like that. So we try to be in all the, social media avenues.
Well, make sure everyone check out feedamericafirst.com. Julie Vandel, Director of Development with Feed America First. Thank you for all you and your amazing team do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.